Hello, and welcome to another episode of Across the Dinerverse. Searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. How are you doing? I'm John Murphy, writer and producer on the science and technology series Innovation Nation, which airs Saturday mornings on CBS. And just check your TV guide for airtime in your area. And now I zigzag my way across the country talking to people over French dips, sandwiches, tater tots, and chocolate malts about their lives, their hometowns, and how they feel about the good old USA. Does America need a massive 12-step program to get back on track? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Something needs to happen and pretty damn quick. Now, the podcast is called Across the Dinerverse, but that doesn't mean I won't go to a cafe or a deli or a regular restaurant or even a bistro, which is where I am this week. A bistro, very international. And I'll get there in just a minute. As you know, my goal is to do a podcast from at least one diner or deli, cafe, bistro, whatever, in all 50 states. So if you'd like to help me reach that goal, please visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Dinerverse and become a patron for as little as $3, which means you can ask me questions about the podcast, throw out questions for me to ask other people, get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and content, or you could use me as a +1 to attend a wedding you really don't want to go to. This week's episode comes from a recommendation by a friend of mine who said the owner has a very interesting life story, and the place is very popular. It's called Cosmo's Bistro. I just love the name. Cosmo's Bistro on the famous Route 66 in Glendora, California. And here comes the twist. Cosmo, the owner, opens the restaurant for free once a week to host a 12-step recovery program for alcoholics, which I thought was very, very cool. So I reached out to Cosmo, and after some gentle coaxing, he agreed to let me set up shop in his place. And I met a couple of guys who were meeting there, both in recovery, and agreed to share their story. So this will be a 2-part episode. Part 1 I'm calling The Old Timer, and you'll soon understand why. Next week, get this title, From Neo-Nazi to the Museum of Tolerance. Think about that for a second. From Neo-Nazi to the Museum of Tolerance. Do not miss that one. Unbelievable, incredible story. But for now, enjoy part 1. Hello, sir. Welcome to the Dinerverse. What is your name?
I'm Les.
Les. We're here at Cosmo's Bistro. Obviously, you're familiar with this place. You're in the restaurant. Are you local to Glendora, California?
Yes, I've been here 46 years, and I come over and eat. The food here is fantastic.
All right. Do you know Cosmo?
Yes, I do.
How do you know him?
By showing up.
Okay, just you're a regular customer.
Yes, what I am.
What do you do?
I manage my property.
Oh, so you're like in commercial properties.
Yes.
And manage that kind of stuff. Yeah. You own homes, apartments, that type of thing?
Houses and apartments, yes.
How's the business? Pretty good right now.
It's good.
Have you always done that?
No, I was in the car business for 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
50 years in the car business.
That's right. I started selling Ramblers in 64.
How old were you?
I was 20.
You must have been a damn good car salesman to sell cars for 50 years.
I always liked cars. Since I was a little kid, I was putting a motor on my bike in the sixth grade.
Did you ever own your own dealership?
I worked for companies up to 75. In 76, I opened a used car lot in Pasadena. I was there for 40-something years.
You had your own used car dealership for 47 years?
Yes.
Man.
We sold everything. New, used, trucks, whatever.
There must have been good money in that.
Oh, it's great. It was great. It's not about the money. It's about service to others. When I went to work thinking that I could go to work and make money, I never sold anything. But if I went to work with the attitude of I could be of service to somebody, I couldn't keep up with my business.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That is an amazing revelation.
Yes.
If you are into something just purely for the money, it may not work out. But if you're into it, you like it, but you're there to help other people, then the door's kind of open.
Immensely.
How'd you find that out?
From experience. I remember I used to get in my car and I was thinking about all the money. I'm going to go sell a couple cars and make some money and do this and that. And I'd go to work and nothing would happen. And then one day I said, what if I go to work and how could I just be of service? And I went there and I just helped somebody. And the next thing you know, I was selling something. And that's how it works. Many times I was at the car lot and it was be dead and, and somebody come around the corner and then that would be the beginning.
And how would you help them? I mean, in being a car salesman, obviously the job is to sell cars. So how do you help people by doing a better deal, or how do you do it?
Well, I think it's the personal connection like we're doing right now. Once you find out their name and show them all different types of cars, and show them how to buy a car. Because most people walk in, they don't know how to buy a car.
Most people in a dealership, they're pretty intimidated most of the time.
Yeah, and it takes forever. I used to have people bounce off a new car dealership and hit my car lot, and I could sell them a car in 20 minutes. They go to a new car dealer, they're there for a half a day.
Yeah.
There's no sense in that.
I just recently bought a new car, and it took, and I had a connection there because a relative had bought numerous cars from this one guy in this one dealership, and it was the brand that we wanted. And so there was already a shorthand connection. It still took me 4 hours to get out of that place with the car and do the paperwork and sign off and everything at 4 hours.
Fast track.
I was on the fast
I think it's
track.
slow.
Yeah.
Right. Slow motion will get you there anyway, quicker.
And what were your challenges, being a car salesman for 50 years?
Well, at the beginning, I wasn't always that way. Before I was 30, I worked for the largest dealers in the city, and everybody was running 100 miles an hour. So it was we'd be drinking and doing other stuff, and that led to disaster for me.
Oh, the partying?
Oh yeah, killed me. I was 30. I was a dead man walking. So I couldn't hold a job. I had a lot of talent, but I couldn't finish anything.
Were you an alcoholic?
Yes.
So this is when you were 30 years old.
30 years old, I ended up in the hospital.
How long were you in the hospital?
I was 30. I went through a 30-day program in Pasadena.
Like a treatment center?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I came out of there and I went to the Bishop Gooden Home in Pasadena. There I learned some basic things. How to live. I got up in the morning, they'd cook you something to eat. I don't know anything about eating in the morning. I drank 6 a.m.
Oh, wow.
I drank to function,
How much would you drink per day?
It wasn't how much I drank, it was the effect. It was the magic elixir. I could be a doctor, a lawyer, or an Indian chief. You give me a couple of shooters or whatever. I was a functioning drinker, alcoholic, till it grabbed me by the throat and threw me to the ground. Killed me at
So
30.
what was that? So you hit a bottom.
I hit a bottom.
And
yeah.
what was the bottom, if you don't mind sharing?
I was hanging on a stop sign on the corner of Parkwood and Colorado in Pasadena. And my barber's husband came around the corner and said, "Get in the car, I'll give you a ride home, you poor devil." And I went in the car and he took me home, and I was in a blackout for 3 days and did what I normally did, drank, and when he took me home, the lady I was living with at the time was getting information on hospitals and alcoholism and stuff, and she told me about this hospital, and I said, I need to go there, because there was no place else to go. I just wanted to die. That's it. I didn't want to live anymore. My thought was, I don't know how to live, and I don't know how to die. That's what got me to that hospital. And that's where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And, they came in with a smile on their face and a step on their walk, and I thought they were smiling at me. I was so paranoid and so crazy, and didn't know how to live. Because I started running away from home in the 6th grade. I ran till I was 30.
So from the age of being in 6th grade to the age of 30, you were on the run.
On the run. I was always looking for some place out there to make me feel good inside myself, and I always ended up zero. So I'm hanging on that. The stop sign is really an important thing here on the corner of Parkwood in Colorado, because I got out of that hospital and I went into the recovery house, and then I went and got a job selling cars. I worked there as a salesman, and then I was a used car manager. And then I went as a general sales manager for Nissan in 1976. Now I have, I have a car, I got a three-piece suit on, I got a little prestige, a little money in the bank. I found myself lying on the floor of my office with the door locked, and I felt like somebody put me in the oven and turned me on broil. And a little voice said to me, "Quit your job." And I thought, "Quit my job? Are you kidding? I got a little something here, and got a little self-esteem, and you want me to quit your job?" And yeah, quit your job. So I went to the owner and said, "Hey, you know what? I quit." And he says, "Wait a minute, you're just burnt out. It's December the 15th. What I want you to do is take off till January 2nd. Come back on the 2nd. I'll keep your salary and your car. You're very valuable to us." So now I'm like a little kid in a candy store, and I went home and I was going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was having that time off, and now here comes January 2nd. I dress all up, roll right in. I get into my office. I wasn't there 3 minutes, and the same thing happened to me. I felt like someone threw me in the oven, turned me on broil, and I thought I told you, quit your job. So I went out back and found me an old Volkswagen. Reporter sailed it to myself. I went to the owner and said, "Here, I don't belong here. I don't know why. I don't know where I'm going or anything, but I'll see you later." I left there with that little Volkswagen and $1,000 in the bank. That's all I had. And next day I picked up a newcomer, and I was taking him to a meeting. His name was Barney, and he was from Lubbock, Texas. He was an old car salesman. I'm 30. He's 60. He said, "Hey, son, you see that lot over there? Let's rent that lot. We'll sell cars there. They wholesale out of the back. We'll buy cars out of there." And I thought, you're crazy. I have only 1,000. I don't know. I know how to sell cars, but I don't know the business aspect of it. So, to make a long story short, I rented the lot for $450. I put a payphone on the wall, and we started selling cars. Right?
People would call the payphone to make an appointment or whatever?
Whatever. I'd call them or whatever. That's how it worked. 1976. And what I would do, though, every time I'd go to work, I'd put the key in the door. I'd say, "I need your wisdom and strength to run this business, God, whoever you are."
So you're praying to God, God.
I'm praying to God. My prayer was, "I don't know who you are or what you are, but I need some help." That's when my life really changed.
So you got to a place of powerlessness.
In sobriety.
Oh, powerlessness in sobriety.
There you go.
Yeah, got it.
Yes, I did. And I realized that I'd go through all these trials and tribulations, but my foundation is Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to live. Not only they taught me how to live, they showed me how to live. I saw people smiling and walking and talking, had a sparkle in their eye. They had a step to their walk. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the faith they had, but they showed me the faith they had. And I just followed, and it saved me so many times. Because when you're not sure and you're in pain, when you first get sober, your brain says drink, because for all your life that's what you did. You drank to kill the pain. You drank to give you the strength to go across the street or to function. But
So the alcohol was really a symptom. It was, the virus or disease is something else inside of you, and you drink to calm that, whatever that thing is that's driving you crazy.
That's right. It was the magic elixir until it doesn't work anymore. And then when all that stuff doesn't work anymore, you got to find a power greater than yourself, which I choose to call God, to give you the strength and the courage to live one day at a time. Sometimes it's a second at a time,
Mm-hmm. What about the people who hate God or are atheists or don't believe in God? How can they possibly follow this program?
They can make the group. Some people use the group as a power greater than themselves.
You mean like the meetings?
Like the meetings,
I see, okay.
and the fellowship as a whole.
Got it.
And I've talked to a lot of agnostics, atheists, And and the way they present it sometimes, it's like they say they don't believe, but they're saying they do believe. It's really, there's a catch there. I mean, I believe that everybody has that pilot in them,
Mm-hmm.
and someone's got to come by and light the match. You know, it's there in every human. But what happened to me was I was at that car lot for 2 years. I was going to buy the property, and the owner came to me and says, "Look, you got 30 days to move. I'm going to come in and sell cars." I was devastated.
Of course.
And so I'm in my office and I'm wondering, what am I going to do? And this lady came in with this little 3-year-old kid. And I could hardly walk. I was almost paralyzed with fear. And I walked out to help her. And this little kid reached his arms up to me and with a smile. And I picked him up and he gave me a hug. It was like 1,000 volts of love went through me. And it was like God saying, "Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right." That was amazing. So I left that car lot, and then I went to work for my uncle.
So a hug from a kid kept you going.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing. So I bought a car, and I sold it to a guy named Checkbook Charlie. He owned 5 dealerships in Pasadena. And he says, "Hey, Les, why don't you rent my lot up there?" And he threw me the keys, and he says, "Here, pay me the rent next month." And that next day I was in that lot. And that lot, I looked up and I saw the stop sign. That was the stop sign.
The same stop sign you were hanging off of, out of your mind, blotto drunk?
Yes. Same stop sign on that corner. And I said, "Man, how do you get from hanging on the stop sign
Wow.
to being on the corner?"
That's a great story.
Right?
That's a great story.
But I was there 40 years, so I had so many of those stories. I mean, one time I had a guy, he bought a car from me. He came in, he used to help me move cars around. And one day he came, he says, "Hey, the church threw me out for smoking." And I said, "Richard, just go to another church. It doesn't matter."
Right.
And he said, "No, I'm done with God," right? So I said,
That's religion.
right?
That's totally bullshit religion.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the kicker. An old car rolls in from Philadelphia, and I sell him a car. I put the car against the wall. In the back window of the package tray, there was a book in there. I said, "There's a book over there." So I go over there, and I got the book, and I open it up. It's a Bible. And when I opened it up, it said Richard Balsamico. That was him. And this Bible came all the way from Philadelphia, and I showed him that Bible. He turned white.
Wow.
I said, "You know what? I think God has a message for you here."
The Bible in that car from
Yeah.
Philadelphia, 3,000 miles away, that ended up in your lot,
Yeah.
was this guy's Bible?
Yeah. Yep.
Odd or
He
God,
said,
right?
That's right.
That's what they say.
You figure
How
it
do you
out.
explain that?
I can't, but I know there's a God because I've had too many divine appointments, call it that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, very many of those.
So what is the foundation of the 12 steps? We talk, there's a lot of knowledge about AA and the 12 step. Everybody jokes about 12 step programs. I got, oh, I love chocolate cake. I should do a 12 step program, that type of thing. What is the 12 step program? By the way, are you allowed to even talk about it?
I can talk about it.
Isn't AA kind of like Fight Club? The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club.
No.
Aren't you not supposed to talk about? Is it supposed to be
No.
anonymous in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Program of attraction, not promotion.
Right.
We're non-denominational. We're not affiliated with any church or religious organization.
Mm-hmm.
We're self-supporting through our own contributions. When I got to AA, I knew I was powerless over alcohol. But how do you live without this alcohol?
You're not cured from it. You're still an alcoholic, technically, right?
I have a daily reprieve based on my spiritual condition and the maintenance thereof. The maintenance is me going to meetings, is having a sponsor, being able to be transparent with another person, because my whole life, my mom died when I was 7, and my dad died of alcoholism. So I had alcoholism before I ever took a drink. Once I took a drink, it was like throwing gas on the fire, and I didn't know how to live. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I learned how to live. And through the steps, the second step is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I had a hard time with that, and because I was so crazy. And if you knew what I was thinking, you'd take me down to Norwalk, they just fill me up with Thorazine or something, but that's not the case in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's one thing, they accept you as you are. Doesn't matter where you've been. The sickest people in the world walk through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and recover. It's
Well, what
like,
about all these treatment centers? Do those treatment centers really work? I mean, people are paying tens of thousands of dollars per month. Insurance is paying tens of thousands of dollars per month. And yet people like relapse and relapse and relapse. What's the connection or disconnection?
treatment centers have nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's separate. I've been sober 47 years, one day at a time. And I know it sounds like a long time, but it's just like yesterday, like you were just a kid, you remember, right? It's the same thing. I got here at 30. I'm 79, and
You're 79?
79.
I got to be honest with you. You do not look 79.
No.
You really don't.
I got high miles deduct for reconditioning.
You really look like a guy like in his mid-60s or something. I mean, you look really great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A byproduct of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Do you ever crave a drink? Do you ever see a
Never.
drink once in a while and go,
No.
I'd just love to have one beer,
No.
one glass of wine?
Nope. Not even.
Wow, that's great.
Never wanted a drink since I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wanted to run away. I wanted the pain to go away, because when you get sober, it's like you come through the Earth's atmosphere with no heat shield. It hurts.
Oh, that's a great description.
It hurts. And pain is the price of admission, because if I'm having some kind of emotional pain, I know I'm going to learn something and I'm going to grow. See, all my life as a kid, and as I got to 30, I never grew up. I got to Alcoholics Anonymous at 30, and I was 7 years old emotionally. When my mom died, I shut down. And when my dad, I had a lot of resentment toward my dad, and I was mad at God. Why you take my mom and drop me on the planet by myself? It was like I felt alone. I had no support. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship is the strongest thing. You could have all the knowledge of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but you have to have the fellowship and be in the middle of it. Be in the middle of the pack. Because if you're in the middle of the pack, you'll survive. If you're on the outskirts and you don't make Alcoholics Anonymous your foundation, your chances are you'll drink again, or you'll go crazy and you'll kill yourself, which I've had a lot of people die because they don't do the work. Anyway, the second step is I had to come to believe in a power greater than myself. And they have a saying there, if you could take that piecemeal. In other words, you go to the third step, where I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. So I went home, got on my knees and said, "Here, I'm crazy. I don't know who you are, what you are, but I'm going to turn my will and my life over the care of you. And here I am." And I'm still doing that in the morning. I exchange, I call it the great exchange. I exchange my will for his will and say, "Hey, where are we going?" Because the night before, I have all my schemes and plans, and my whole day changes, and it's not my time anymore. So what my prayer today is, use my time while I'm on this planet wisely.
What about, because I've heard people say this, accuse AA of being a cult.
Did you ever look up what cult is on the dictionary?
All right, I found it on my phone. Here's the definition of a cult. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. A system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. So is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, a cult?
I don't think so. It's just like when the sick people need a doctor, they go to the hospital. Alcoholics Anonymous is the waiting room more people walk through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a 50-50 chance of staying. I mean, if they work the deal. I mean, there's a lot of people come in and go over courts and
Courts assign like drunk
right,
drivers, you know, that
right.
you're mandated to go to
Go to
alcoholics.
we'll sign. We do that as a courtesy. It's not. We don't have to,
Right.
but we do it as a courtesy.
What do you think the percentage of success is using AA in the 12-step program?
Well, I think if you work the 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous has the highest rate for recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think it's somewhere between 45 and 50%. Now, they come with real low numbers, if you go look it up, because they're counting anybody that walks through the door and walks out. And that, to me, is not being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
And obviously, there's a myriad of offshoots. You have
Cocaine Anonymous,
gambling addicts, you know, all kinds of
Narcotics
addicts.
Anonymous, but they all use the 12 steps.
So that's the spine of everything. That's the spine of all the recovery.
12 steps. I believe that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is outlined in the Bible, shown into a way of action. You have to take the right action to get the different results. If you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, that's insanity, you know, expecting different results.
Do you think people who don't have a drinking problem or a drug problem or a gambling problem, do you think they could do this 12-step program and benefit from it?
It's all positive.
Is there a therapeutic, like almost a psychiatric or psychological component to it?
I'm bodily and mentally different than a normal person. I have what they call an X factor. Now, everything I've said is just my opinion.
Right.
I'm not an authority on Alcoholics Anonymous or any of those other anonymous programs, but I know this, that for me, I can't pick up a drink or use any kind of mind-altering medications, because it works in reverse for me and sends me down the wrong road. It distorts my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, as a man thinketh, so he is. You know, I have to watch my thought patterns. Everything I thought I knew, I had to erase.
Have you ever doubted it?
Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah.
No. I'm proof in the pudding. I mean,
and how many years sober? 40-something?
47.
40. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And you don't look like you're 79 years old. Do you have peace of mind? Do you have a joyful life?
Oh, my God is the God of a second chance. I mean, I got 5 kids. 2 died from the disease of alcoholism.
You lost 2 of your own children to the disease?
Yes, I did.
What's that like, burying your own kid to alcoholism?
It's hard. It's I had to sit and I had to thaw out, you know, in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was like I have this mechanism inside me since I was a little kid. I could go numb. I could numb myself and not feel, and that's not a healthy thing. But I had to go to meetings and sit on the chair and thaw out when that happened. And then by writing inventories and looking for patterns, you know, I had a lot of resentment towards my dad and stuff, and I grew up in the flower business. And my dad taught me a lot of things, and he died of alcoholism. And as a 7-year-old kid, when I went to live with him, I saw how he used to sit in the middle of the room and be drinking at 2 o'clock in the morning before he went to the flower market, and then he'd be throwing up. I never realized what he was feeling until it happened to me. And so when I wrote my inventory, all the resentments I had towards my dad, and then my sponsor said, hey, draw a line, and what's your part? I never once thought of how he felt when I ran away from home in the 6th grade, how I ran away and I kept running, was gone a year, you know, or the pain or the wondering where I was, you know, and I always, I tried to go back and visit with him, you know, and I wanted to see him. I remember one time, and it was in a driving rainstorm. I got off the bus and I got real wet, and then my pride kept me from going in the door for, you know, to go visit him, because I was soaking wet and I was tired, and I turned around and never saw him until the last time I saw my dad. It was, I ran away from home and I hitchhiked across the United States to New Orleans, and I came back into town. They said, hey, you better go see your dad, he's dying.
How old were you?
I was 15.
Jesus.
Yeah, 15.
Jesus, 15 years old.
And I worked in Chicago too, and I came back a year later and I went and saw him, and he was dying, and he died. Good, I'll get the flower shop and kick my stepmother out. I made a list of all the people I had harmed and became willing to make an amends, and my stepmother was on the top of the list. I was scared to death to go make that amends, so I just got in the car and took the action, went into the flower shop, made my amends, and she talked to me because she taught me a lot. I went to live with her when I was 7 until I was 15. So, and she told me her side, and she became my mom, and I had a 38-year relationship with her. I was the fire department. She had a problem. She just called me up, and that would have never happened had it been for the Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And as far as my dad, I wrote him a letter at his grave, and I realized what was my part. I was a selfish kid, and that he taught me a lot of good things. How to be of service to others. How to work the cash register, how to go buy flowers, how to sell flowers. All that stuff came to play later in my life. So I don't have any resentments. I don't have any anger. I have nothing. I have love for my dad. I love my dad, and I know what he went through, the pain and the suffering of alcoholism. Alcoholism is a family disease. It affects everybody in the family. While the alcoholic's drinking, the rest of the family's going crazy. If you have a problem with alcoholism, go through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and sit down and listen. And the families, they should go to Al-Anon. Al-Anon.
What's Al-Anon?
Al-Anon is for the families of
to kind of
alcoholics.
understand what an alcoholic is.
It's learning how to take care of yourself and keeping your focus on yourself rather than on the alcoholic or other people, places, and things.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's plenty of collateral damage living with an alcoholic or in the alcoholic family. What do you think the hardest step is? Now, do you sponsor people?
Yes.
Okay, so in your experience, what is the hardest step for most people who are trying to get recovery?
Four made a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself.
Moral inventory.
Tell somebody your whole life story. Write it down. Write it down.
The darkest stuff.
Yeah, everything.
Everything. The worst that you've ever done.
Everything.
Damn.
Totally transparent. We call them sponsors. And then, then you got to tell them. You got to write it down. That's the 4. 5 you tell.
You share it with this people.
Yeah, and then you make your list out of that inventory. I can't, and usually you become sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you realize you have a character defect, like control issue. There's a whole bunch of them, And
do you see people exchange addictions one from the other? So if they show up in an AA meeting and they get a hold of, they get a grip on alcoholism, do they morph into something else? Could they become a sex addict or a gambleaholic or a shopaholic?
Candy's dandy.
What is it?
Candy is dandy.
What about
chocolate?
Yeah. Oh, I see. Got it.
Right.
Yeah, a sweet addict.
I mean, I used whatever I worked till I realized it doesn't work. I need a power greater than myself to get me through 6 and 7. Humbly ask him to remove my shortcomings.
So Les has the manager of his life. That's you. You can't do it. You need something else to help you do it.
Definitely, I'm powerless.
Well, it works for you, man. Look at you. You still here?
I'm still here.
You're still here?
Not all there, but I'm still here.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And just real quickly, where can people, if somebody's listening to this podcast and they think that they're struggling with some form of addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or shopping or workaholism, gambling, sex, whatever it is, what advice would you give them?
Go to a meeting. They got them all. They got.
How do they find one?
Just look them up on your phone. Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous.
They just Google it, and then it'll take them to a meeting in their area.
Right there, and you'll find somebody that has the same problem. And when I got to the meeting, it was like, man, I'm not the only one. That's the whole thing. Is identification is everything. You feel so alone, and if you knew where I was or what I'm doing, you wouldn't love me. You're not alone.
Other people are helping you through it.
That's right. You're not alone.
That's great. It's a beautiful thing. Les, welcome to the Dynaverse. Thank you for talking with us.
It's been a pleasure. And the food here is great.
Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, was formed in Akron, Ohio in 1935 by two men, Bill Wilson, known as Bill W., a former Wall Street stockbroker, and Dr. Bob Smith, both hopeless alcoholics at the time. Now, what they figured out with the help of a Christian organization called the Oxford Group and other medical professionals was that addiction was not a moral failing by an individual. It was a disease that needed treatment, and that alcoholism was merely a symptom of bigger mental, emotional issues. Bill W. and Dr. Bob drilled down on the causes and conditions that can lead somebody into addiction. Things like childhood trauma, physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, anxiety, depression, hopelessness, self-hatred, and the list goes on. The two men started compiling what worked and, more importantly, what didn't during the recovery process of other alcoholics they tried to help. And Bill W. sat down and wrote what is now known as the Big Book of AA. It was published in 1939 and included personal testimonies of 30 individuals who were able to attain and keep their sobriety. In other words, they shared their story, which is one of the key reasons 12-step programs work. Today, AA has helped millions of men and women get sober and restore their lives. There are well over 100,000 AA groups in over 150 countries worldwide. If you think you have an issue with alcohol, or maybe it's narcotics, or gambling, or sex, or eating, or something else, you can visit for alcohol, AA.org, for narcotics, NA.org, gamblersanonymous.org, for sex and love addiction, SLAAFWS.org, to name a few. And I'll post all of these websites on my podcast page under the show notes at thedynaverse.com. That's thedynaverse.com. Now, meet the man who opens his heart and his restaurant, Cosmo's Bistro, to those who need it. Are you the famous Cosmo of Cosmo's Bistro?
Unfortunately, yes.
You know what? I got to be honest with you. I love the name Cosmo. Can I tell you why?
Why is that?
When I was a kid, between the ages of 11 and 13, I had a paper route in the small town in Nebraska I grew up in. And I was a fat kid. Nobody liked me. I was just all by myself. I was lonely. But the very last house on my paper route, they had a golden retriever. And his name was Cosmo.
Nice.
And this golden retriever saved my life. This dog loved me unconditionally. He played with me. I took naps in his doghouse. He laid on me. And so I have forever loved and adored the name Cosmo.
Very good. Yeah, we were born in Scotland, but my father was Italian and my mother was second generation Italian.
Wow.
And all the kids, Cosmo, Leo, Giulio, Enrico, Gino, they all have Italian names. So Cosmo, the Monsignor, came over to the day I was born and said, this is the feast of St. Cosimo and Damiano. And it turned out they dropped an I in the middle of Cosimo. And there was a picture house, like a theater, like an AMC type theater in Glasgow, Scotland, that was called the Cosmo Theater. And they kind of just named me Cosmo out of the blue.
Just out of the blue?
Out of the blue.
How do you like the name Cosmo?
I like it. It grew on me. I used to get teased a lot, but eventually it became kind of unique.
Especially in a bar. People say, I want a Cosmo. Give me 3 Cosmos.
Or, for instance, Seinfeld.
Cosmo Kramer.
Yeah, I got a lot. I lived in San Francisco at the time. And I used to go play pool after work, and I put my name on the board, and they say, oh, yeah, Cosmo Kramer. So it kind of...
So your family's originally from Scotland?
Correct.
What city?
Glasgow.
Glasgow.
Yeah.
I've been there. It's a great city.
Yeah, it is. A lot of culture.
Yeah, a lot of great old pubs there as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who work in the North Sea on the oil rigs live in Glasgow.
It used to be big back before I was born. But the Clyde used to be a big port for instance, the American soldiers coming over or big commerce around there.
How in the hell did you get to Glendora, California?
Well, my mom's sisters both emigrated to the United States. We came in 79. They came over in about 69, I believe. They emigrated from Glasgow to I think one stopped back east, and the other one ended up in Glendora, anyways. And so my dad used to own two fish and chip shops over in Scotland, and the government wanted to knock them down and build housing, and they just happened to visit the time this was all going on, and they said, "Hey, you guys should move to sunny California." And one thing led to another. We applied for legal residency, and before we knew it, we were over here.
How long did it take you to actually become a legal citizen and assimilate here in the United States from Scotland?
I'm still not a citizen.
Really?
Yeah, I never got my citizenship, and I've been here since I was 10.
How you've been here since you were 10?
Correct. I'm legal.
You are legal. Okay.
Legal alien. I'm still a citizen of the United Kingdom. You don't have to. You can be a resident alien. It's called your green card.
Right.
And
Do you have
everything that a citizen would do, for instance. But
do you have to renew it every 5 years?
correct.
Do you have to take
10 years?
Every 10 years?
Yeah.
How difficult is it to maintain that status for decades after decades?
If you leave the country, it is. But I've never left the country. I guess if you leave for over 3 months, I believe, then they can take it away from you. I was going to become a citizen, but the lines were so long, and I was always in a hurry, and I just said, you know what? I'm not going to ever be running for government or working a government job, so it's pretty much the same thing.
So why go through the hassle?
Why even bother?
So you have a very interesting perspective on this big conversation we're having nationally in this country about immigration. What's your take on it when you see people coming across the border and people trying to get into this country based on your experience and what you're doing, a legal resident alien for decades? What's your view on the American immigration system right now?
It's been broken ever since I've been here, basically, right? They've been talking, every election, every 4 years, they're always talking about the border. Have they ever fixed it? No, it doesn't matter if there's a Democrat or Republican. People need to feed their family, and that's why other countries are oppressive, and
that's why your family came here.
Yeah, they did apply for. It took a couple of years,
but
I see where you're going.
What you're saying
I feel bad for the people in other countries that just trying to survive and will pretty much do anything to feed their family. And I understand it's not their fault; it's the government's fault, I believe.
Do you have any idea on how we could remedy the situation?
I don't, and
it's very complex.
It's really complex. I mean, you got to fix other countries. There's got to be trade between these countries at our border. We got to make them stronger. I don't see a lot of people from Canada wanting to run in here, right?
Right.
And my coworker was telling me going from the United States to Canada. It seems I've never done it, but she said it takes quite a while to get across the border. Have you ever gone from the United States to Canada?
Well, just to visit, yeah. I mean, going
and
through.
How was the?
They're pretty strict.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, especially during COVID, you had to have all your COVID paperwork and all your shots and vaccinations and proof and all that kind of stuff. It was a little tense, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have never tried to immigrate there. I've never wanted to try and move to Canada and live there as a legal resident or whatever. So I don't know what that process is like. But I think it's very interesting that your parents came here to the United States to get away from a situation where the government was taking their business to turning into public housing. They found a desirable place to try and reestablish that business, bring the family here, great weather, great opportunity. Did your parents struggle in trying to make a life for you and your family here?
Well, we have 7 kids, right? So to bring 7 kids to the United States in a country that was just so different than the country we all grew up in, they went through a lot of pain. And like my dad was a businessman over there. He owned a couple of fish and chip shops. Here he had to get a job at the Vaughn's factory down in Irwindale, where he was pretty much packing meat.
And Vaughn's is a grocery store chain.
Correct.
Yeah.
And my mom got a job on an assembly line, pretty much electronic assembly line.
So factory work.
Yeah, factory work. They went through a lot. they were in their almost 50 at the time when we moved here.
Oh, that's
So
late.
it's a
Yeah.
big change of life, bringing 7 kids to a new country and not knowing what was going to happen, basically.
What's your memory of your childhood within your family, living here and trying to restart your family life here in Southern California?
Well, I had so many siblings. I was the youngest of 7 that I had a really nice childhood because with 4 older brothers and 2 older sisters, there was a lot of love and good memories.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but there was some struggles, and I felt the time when kids want this and they want that, they would like this, and my mom always provided. Back then, I wish I would have been a little bit more understanding of their situation and their finances.
Do you feel that the government and the access to benefits and opportunities at that time for your family, there were systems in place to actually help them get started and to move them forward?
I was too young.
Did they ever talk to you about it when you became an adult and got into your own business?
No, we never really had that conversation. And they were survivors, though. They've always been really hard workers, which in turn, I got that trait from them. I work 7 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I put in the 40 hours a week plus another 40, and my parents were always like that too. We got that work ethic basically from our parents.
How long has this restaurant been here and open?
We opened it 9 years ago. I shouldn't say we, I should say I.
Well, your name is on the restaurant.
Go figure.
Cosmo's Bistro.
Yeah, well, I grew up here most of my life from 10 to high school. After my dad passed away, my mom was living by herself, and I thought, hey, this might be a good opportunity to move from I was living in San Diego at the time. I had a couple of delis. I thought it would be a good idea to relocate back to where I grew up.
To help your
To
mom?
help my mom, take care of my mom, and be close to her, because I knew she's 90 years old now. I knew that there wouldn't be many years left that I got to spend with my mother.
And she's the Italian one, right?
No, she's Irish.
Oh,
Italian.
she's the Irish one. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, Irish Scottish
She was
one.
born in Glasgow, though.
Okay, all right. So, of course, at 90, you immediately put her to work in the kitchen, right?
Actually, but she does come in. You saw it today, Les. She was in here clean. She comes in and cleans and helps out.
Oh, she's still
for a
with
couple
us?
hours. Oh, she's a hard worker. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's wonderful.
Yeah. No.
Gives her a
busy.
purpose.
Yeah.
Why an Italian restaurant? Have you always been in the restaurant business? Was that your niche?
I have. Like I said, my dad owned 2 fish and chip shops in Glasgow. So at an early age, I was always in the shop. Most of the time eating. You mentioned you were a little bit chubby when you were a kid. I was really chubby. I'd love fish and chips.
Yeah. That's the terrible, worst diet ever for a young kid.
I was always under my dad's feet, like at the restaurant, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. But is it a passion for you? Do you love it?
Well, I work so much that sometimes it originally wasn't a passion, but some days you just want some time off to rest and relax. It's a lot of work, believe it or not. All these TV shows about how these food shows, how they make everything so damn glamorous. Come in here and work as many hours as I do and tell me it's still glamorous,
That's that's exactly right. The explosion of culinary cooking shows makes it look so wonderful and glamorous.
Every week there's something wrong.
Yeah.
We were broken into 2 weeks ago. The oven hoods went down. It doesn't matter. Every week there's some sort of mild disaster, and you are the only one that has to take care of it. The refrigeration's down. Employees don't show up to work. You're bouncing around trying to figure out putting a team together on a Saturday night. It's nonstop situations that happen.
Well, you have it's a double duty job because you have the menu, the food, the preparation, buying the right amount, preparing it, updating the menu, trying new things, and then you have the business side,
Correct.
which is managing employees, hiring, firing. I can see where it's an 80, 90-hour a week for you.
The restaurant it's the size of it. You can't really hire managers and assistant managers, head chefs, this guy, I even do the bookkeeping. I mean, you got to wear a lot of different hats.
Mm-hmm.
So when you asked me originally It's your passion. Yeah, boss, my passion. And it still is. I love being my own boss. I can't work for anybody else. But unfortunately, sometimes you just get overwhelmed and you just want to say, fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
I
know?
get it. I get it. Post-COVID,
Yeah.
I mean, thank God you survived. You're still here. But post-COVID, how challenging has it been with inflation, meeting those margins, paying the higher prices, getting produce and stock in here, and then paying a fair wage for employees who want to keep coming back and stay in the job?
Well, and here the minimum wage went up to what is it, 15.50 for waiters and busboys. So
This is here in
in
California.
if you go to Texas, for instance, it's like $2.50 an hour. And you were telling me in Utah, Kristen, how much is the minimum wage in Utah? $2.15. So these guys are getting actually a nice sized paycheck along with their tips. They're pretty
Yeah.
much working for their tips. And the 15.50 an hour, they're doing pretty good.
Right.
But I can see in other states where you're getting paid $2.15 an hour to wait tables, that could be kind of a struggle. But California is pretty liberal with the minimum wage, right?
Are your employees satisfied with the money they're earning?
I'm sure they are. They do pretty well here.
How much can a waitress make in a tip on a Friday and Saturday night?
Being the small restaurant that I have, I run one waiter. He works all the time. He pretty much takes care of the front. And then I've got a couple that have a full-time job that come in and fill in the gaps, basically. But he makes $1,500 tips, just the tip part, a week.
$1,500 a week?
Yeah, but he works all the time too.
Wow.
And then his paycheck after taxes is about $800 to $900 in the paycheck. So he's doing really good. As for the rest of them, they're probably not doing that. They're just supplementing their income, basically.
You've been here for 9 years, obviously successful.
It's been a struggle, though.
How much longer do you think you can hold out and keep going?
I was hoping 5 more years.
Okay.
That's in a real world, but let's see what happens.
What is the thing that keeps bringing people back?
This town, it's a small community, and I think it took us 3-4 years to start getting a little bit more established, where people felt comfortable coming back. And I think we've pretty much passed that threshold. As for signature dishes, I can tell you what's popular. The lasagna is always popular, although we have many different items on the menu. But we have steaks, fish. We have 14-inch pizzas, all sorts of pastas. It's a wide array of food.
Well, Cosmo, congratulations for being a survivor. Congratulations for getting here to America and making the best of it. Let me ask you one final question. You don't have your American citizenship, but do you consider yourself an American?
Of course I do, yeah. I haven't been back to Scotland since I was 10. I've never been back. The Scotch people over here, when you find out, oh, you're Scottish, it's like an instant connection.
Right.
And when I tell them I've never been back, they're like, you've never, it's like almost a cardinal sin.
Yeah.
You've never been back?
That's right.
What's wrong with you? I'm really American, though. After 45 years over here, This is my homeland. I'm American.
Do you have a kilt?
I don't have a kilt. I don't have any Scottish blood. So we have a lot more Italian traditions than Scotch. That being said, one of my brothers thinks he's a true Scot. For some reason, he's big time Scottish.
If it's not Scottish, it's crap.
Exactly, that's him.
Cosmo, wonderful to meet you, and welcome to the Diniverse and allowing us to come in here.
All right, cool. Nice meeting you, bro.
That wraps up another episode of Across the Diniverse. A big thank you to Cosmo's Bistro in Glendora, California, the pride of the foothills. Learn more about them at cosmosbistroglendora.com. That's cosmosbistroglendora.com. It's all one word. Personally, I love the grilled chicken pesto pizza. Oh man, delicious. And don't miss part 2 of the mystery and miracle of 12-step programs from neo-Nazi to Museum of Tolerance. It'll be a good one, I promise you. Theme music by Keith Brock and the Kings Who Rock. And if you want to support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/Diniverse, and a big thank you from me. Across the Dinerverse, always searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. I'm John Murphy. What's your story?